Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Railroad Empires, How We're Building Them. Tonight is episode number 10, and I got to tell you, I'm really happy for this episode. This last episode of the season, not the final episode in the series, just the final episode of the season. Tonight, we're going to have a little conversation about final touches. Truth be told, not all of us are really there yet. One of our guys is, so he's going to have probably the most playtime on tonight's episode. So because of that, we wanted to go ahead and kick off tonight's episode with just a basic conversation of what final touches is and what that phrase means to each of us. So I'm going to jump over right to Tim and see what his thoughts are.
For me, it would be, what actually makes the scene look lived in. Like trash, dunnage, makes it look like an active scene where people or animals are living. Your people in there, your live animals, like you can see in the background there. I've got a bear standing on the hillside. There's actually a family of them there. I've got the electrical workers running power lines. That's what it is to me. And on buildings, it's making the buildings look like they're lived in, adding, maybe adding some details like window blinds, lighting. It's gonna be your smaller details, your finer details, and to make it look lived in, make it look used, not make it look so museumy. Don't make it look like it's a train layout. I like the idea of being able to get down at eye level on my layout and not realize I'm actually on a layout. And that for me is what I try to go for.
I think trash is one thing that's often underdone. That we don't have the right impression. There are people who pull that off. I've said before in our community, Gino Sharp, who used to do some videos here, and most of us follow him. He's one of the few people I've seen that really gets trash right. Lance Meeheim, there's a few other people. Everywhere humans are, we kind of dirty the place up. And if you're going to model something realistic, that has to be a part of that. If you depending on your perception, and that may come back to the same philosophy as people have on graffiti. I'm now modeling 87, so graffiti will be there. I don't love graffiti. I don't necessarily approve of graffiti, especially on railroad equipment. But if it's there, I model it. And that's the same way with trash. So I think you really hit the nail on the head with the trash component for sure. But all the little details matter, of course.
And it doesn't go ahead and just be trash. It can be done. Like pallets and plastic wraps, just left sitting on the side, or even railroad ties laying along the right of way. Something that actually literally makes the track look lived on or worked on.
Yeah, I think life's the key, or at least from my impression.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, one of the things that I kind of dislike about the way our hobby has played out is that no matter what you do, no matter how big your layout is, it's effectively a diorama where the trades are the only moving component. I mean, I'm fascinated with these automated road systems like the Faller system, and I had planned for and have some provisions for my layout to integrate the open car system, or what Marty's been doing with the RC cars. That's interesting to try to bring some life to our layouts. But with the proper figures, with Lloyd's layout, you get some impression of what's going on in the scenes. The same thing with yours there, Tim. I've tried to do some of that with mine, but I'm still too early in the process for much of that. But it's the little vignettes that tell the little scene about the couple walking down the street, or the people in an office building trying to do their work, or whatever. Yeah.
Well, for me, every scene or every part of my layout has to tell a story.
Yep.
For example, my main street, you got, like you said, you got people walking. You've got a bus stop. You've got the newspaper stand. You got leaves on the streets. You've got a culvert. Like it finishes the scene. somebody told me last week, because I'm building my brewery, and I was showing off the roofs details that I'm putting on the roof, and somebody mentioned that if you're standing on the ground, you do not see that roof. But unfortunately, on a layout, I mean, it's right there, especially if it's 2 feet away, you're seeing the roof. So you might as well detail it. Um, so, and also the fact that I'm a fanatic about details, it's like the screen that you see right now, this was a diorama contest that I participated in it. And I've put so much stuff in there, and most of it is all scratch built. But the details, people go back to that picture and they say, oh, I didn't see that eagle, or I didn't see the woodpecker or the rabbits. Oh, there's a still in the back. There's the boat. There's stuff in the boat. There's so much detail that when you come back and look at the picture, you'll find something that you haven't seen before, because there's so much details. Do we have to go all the way to that point? I don't think so. It's just that one spot on your layout, like I said, there's got to be something there. It's got to be eye-catching. It's like when you put utility poles on your layout, I do expect to see wires, or else you might as well just not put any poles. And if you're going to put poles and wires and you've got building beside it, how are those buildings being fed? So you got to put like a meter on the building and bring wires to the building. I mean, you don't have to go through all that. Then, like, just don't put poles at that point.
I mean, and with modern day, you don't even have to put the wires to the building, because a lot of houses, they're burying the wires to the building now. So they'll come down the pole and they'll run underground, and then you'll just have the meter on the side of the house.
Depend what area you're doing, yeah.
Yeah.
Or you can backfeed the wire from the backside. You can fake a lot of this stuff, but something has to tell that story about how it all, it not just tells the story of the humans and the people and the vehicles, but how all of the structures and how everything else is functioning.
It's the same thing with lights. I just lit up my building there. For me, that's important, because since I'm going to have daylight and nighttime, during the night, I want to be able to have my buildings come out, or that story come out.
Well, I think you guys have captured the flavor of the urban scene pretty well. But I think where you guys might have misstepped a little bit is in the nature scenes, right? So let me ask you this: how many times have you driven through a forested area and seen a bear or a deer, or some sort of an animal?
Deer for sure.
More often or not, you don't.
Deer for sure, especially in me and Andy's area.
Yeah.
Occasionally.
More often than not, you don't, right? So, I mean, if you're going to make changes to your scenery every day and add in some deer, add in a bear, take them away, whatever, then that's fine. But I think the reality is that most of us aren't really going to do that on a day-to-day basis. So, in my mind, having it to a point of realism is the key factor, but not necessarily the minute detail of a woodpecker or a deer or something like that. I think that's borderline on rivet counter status. Not that that's a bad thing, but that takes it to a different level right there.
Well, if you're gonna have a layout that, the size that I have, if you're gonna have, let's say, 10 feet or 12 feet of just trees, there's nothing there. So you're just gonna pass that area. But if you're gonna put, like, I've got one section where I've got cows, because it's like in not a wooden area, but it's a field, and I've got cows. I even got cow dumps. I mean, you have to really pay attention to the cow dumps, because you won't see them, but they're there. So in a month from now, when you come back and you say, "Oh, I didn't see that shit," well, it's there.
If it's there on the real thing, it should be there in the model. I do think people overdo things to the point, to Robert's point. I think people often overdo some things and don't do or underdo other things. Like how many layouts have I seen that don't have power lines on them, to your point, Lloyd, and I completely and wholeheartedly agree with that. Some of this is a bit of a dramatic statement. I mean, I've seen Sasquatches and other things that are comedic elements. And I enjoy the comedy of that. I don't put it in my model layout per se, but I enjoy the comedy of it. And I think it's probably fine to have a few deer, but that should be a rare element. I mean, even in my very wooded scene, it should be fairly rare.
But I want to go back to Robert's point. It doesn't have to be deers or bears. Like I've got another area, which is an open field, and I intend to plant, to put 6 apple trees and put apples on the ground. That's the finishing touch for me. Instead of having just a blank field, well, there's apple trees, there's an orchard, there's an old car with shrubs growing through it. Those little things.
But that's the whole point, though, boys. Like, so we're getting into this conversation of what we're gonna do, but I think the overarching realism behind it is it all depends on the specific modeler.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not going to bother with power lines and super minute and finite detail on it. It's just not at this phase. Right. I'm still at the construction phase. As you can see, I'm still starting to build things out. So, when I get grass on this back piece back here, to me, I'm good. That's done. I'm happy with that. That's the point. Get your finishing touches should be getting your layout to a point where you're happy with it.
Where you're happy saying, I'm done with that section for now.
Yep.
For now. That's my key. For now.
For me, it's putting a little bit more detail in it. For Andy, it's putting a little bit more detail in it. I mean, like my dad, he might be happy with just having a rock sitting there in a field of green, grass. And that'd be fine for him.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on the individual modeler. That's where it ends at. So
it's where you decide that you're at to say that I'm done with this section of my layout for now until I figure out what I want to do to maybe improve it.
Yep. Yeah. All right. Well, on that note, Tim, let's just jump right in with your finishing touches and let's show everybody what your idea of finishing touches is.
Well, like me, for like Lloyd, it's lighting and animals and creatures and people living in a scene. Like I said a while ago, I've got bears in the background. This building here I've lit. I actually added LEDs to and light bezels to it. They're little brass punched out stampings, and I put LEDs in them. I've got this building here that I've got spider crawling off of. If you look inside, it's got wallpaper, tile floor. The bottom floor's got carpet in it. And it's got LED lighting to it. This actually just happens to have the Woodland Scenics just plug system that I put in it. My daughter even asked me one day, she was working on building the Walther's gas station. And she was like, Dad, wouldn't it be cool if the gas station lit up? I said, yeah, that would be kind of cool, McKenna. So guess what we did?
Lit it up like the 4th of July?
Yep.
Nice.
And that one's actually done with some of those LED Christmas lights. Although I'm not powering it with that system. I'm powering it up right now. I'm powering it off my benchtop power supply. But it's got inside I drilled out the light housings that Walters molds in, and I just passed the LED through it, pulled them back up, and I cut some pieces of styrene tube and made light housings. Eventually, I'm going to put some lens material over top of it so you can't actually see the LEDs. But when it all goes together, it's all lit, all lit up. Then it actually casts a pretty decent light down here, and it looks like, modern gas station island.
Nice.
So, and then she wanted to add on some more they give you plenty of gas pumps, and they only have a spot for 3 gas pumps on it. So I added a spot for 3 more gas pumps. So, it's your finishing details don't always have to be done when you're finishing your layout. You can do your finishing details, while you're going through, or think about them. What am I going to do to finish this scene?
Well, Tim, I saw a culvert on your layout.
Yeah.
That's a finishing touch.
Yep.
I saw a train crossing. You've got a train crossing road. That's what you call it. Yeah. I mean, some people will probably not put that in, but you've put it in to make it a final scene. It's part of your scene. I mean.
Well, and that scene that we're looking at right here, I got to looking at it and I was like, man, that is just too plain. There needs to be some other detail there. I've got that rock wall back there. 9% of the time when you see a rock wall along tracks where it's like that, there's water pooled up between the track and the wall. Well, that needs to drain off somehow. So then I cut the hole in there, and I put the culvert in after I was done with everything. I thought the scene was done. And I got to look at it and I was like, it's just too plain. It's too empty. That's where we get into that it's done for now. And then I started making those telephone poles, and I was like, those go right along the track just great. And I put them in that scene there. And, so it's, as you get done with your layout, you're going to find more and more stuff that you want to tweak. Okay, well, I was done with this scene, but I think this may look better. Do it. See how you like it. I mean, you're not going to really make your scene any worse, I don't think.
So, real quick, I want to just jump in here, Tim. We got a couple of really good questions. Human City Junction asks, and I think this is for the whole group, do you work on a section of the layout, for example, a 2-foot section, until you are done and then move on to another section? Or do you work on the entire layout with one thing like ballasting and then move on?
Can I take this one first?
Go ahead.
All 4 of us are going to take it.
Okay, I finish. I do sections here and there because if I was to do just wiring, I would get fed up. If I was to do just ballasting, I would get fed up. So I'll do ballasting for maybe half an hour. Then I'll go do static grass on another section. Another section I'll do the streets. Another section I'll put lights. And yes, I'll finish some sections so that I get a good feeling of what I see and that I really like. And it kind of motivates me to go to the next section and get it done.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one too, Lloyd. Certain areas I have done large swaths of scenery, and then I come back and then I work on an individual section of it. And like this section here, I've really worked on getting the details right in this section. My crossing sections, my next area, I'm going to focus on getting the crossing gates and getting them functional, getting them painted the right colors, getting them blinking, getting them actually working with sensing the train coming across. But like Robert said, individual modelers, what they consider finished is going to vary depending on themselves. If they don't feel confident with doing that, or they just feel confident, just putting down just a piece of like foam or something as a road, like we were talking about different types of road, hey, that's what you want is your finished layout. It's your layout. Ultimately, it is your railroad. And you're muted, Robert.
I really like having a section of the layout that I could work on this in. So, and this is just human psychology or playing my psychology, is that I could come in one evening or on a Saturday and decide I feel like ballasting, or I feel like doing some significant scenery, or I really want to lay some static grass, or I want to build some track. And I've got basically everything to do at some point of a layout. If I feel froggy, I can glue some people down and start putting a scene together. I've got far enough along that every point there's a point on my layout that is at every phase of construction at this point. I'm sure there will be a time where basic scenery will be effectively done or something, but it's going to be a while before I get there. So I like the smaller steps. I work, a module at a time typically. So 6-8 feet tops.
And like Lloyd said, it helps keep you motivated, because and you're not burning yourself out on one type of project at a time.
Which is why I like the modular approach, the Toma style, working in sections, which doesn't have to be in physical sections, but thinking about it in sections helps me.
I have to say, as modelers, we probably tend to be ADD.
There's a bit of that.
Yeah.
Because we skip from project to project. Well, that also helps us get some stuff done and work along and get multiple things done at one time.
See, for me, it depends on what I'm working on, right? So for this layout, I worked on this side, this half that you guys can see now first. Got all the foam down, all of it painted and everything else like that. Then I put down all my track on this entire half of the layout. Then I moved over to the other half of the layout to do the same thing. It was a whole different side of the process. When it comes to ballasting, I'll probably do all of my ballasting in one shot. It's easier to do it that way, I find. But like right now, I've got this hillside scenery in the middle of the build, basically, and I'm just kind of stopped, and I'm working on doing on a couple other things. I'm working on a paper house building that you guys might have seen, might not. So it just depends on what I'm working on as to whether I'm going to do it all in one shot or if I'm going to do a section at a time. And let's see, Bill wants to know, what is the most challenging aspect you have found to build a scene?
I always plan my scenes. I take a piece of paper and I draw what I want to have on that particular scene, and I work from there.
I wish I could. I'm envious of people who could draw it from the beginning. I mean, Robert has eventually convinced me about the joys of planning digitally, which I tried initially, and maybe it only worked for me to draw it digitally in retrospect because I had the vision. And I could get what we talked about a couple of shows ago or last show, the scene composition. I could get the kind of big picture, but even that, I have to actually start building the thing and modify it. And the scenes that I like the best are the ones I've cut into the mountain of a couple times. I mean, over in that corner where the mountains are fairly low now, in that corner, that was a fairly high mountain at one point, and I cut it down because it didn't look right. So I have to start putting it together and then modify it to try to get the scene to come together. So, boy, I wish I could draw it out the way an artist would draw out a movie screenwriter would build out that layout. I wish I could, but I just have to start putting it together and build it out as it works. And when it doesn't work, I pull things apart. So
I was going to ask a question to Robert, because we know that he's going to have a trestle on his layout. So Robert, your trestle that you're planning, how are you planning also the underneath, the water, the cliffs, or the mountainside, or the what's holding the
Well,
trestle? I'm sure you have an idea.
yeah. So first of all, on that, the trestle's gone out the window. It was something that I would absolutely love to do, but the reality of me, one, having a time, two, having the patience to actually build it and build it properly right now is just not feasible. So I think I'm gonna cheat a little bit and use a 1/4-inch plywood and get some of those Central Valley Model Works plate girders and build a plate girder bridge out of it. But yeah, so I kind of see where you're going, Lloyd, and I am thinking ahead and thinking about what I need to do to make sure it all looks right. So I'm planning on doing a waterfall scene towards the back of the layout, towards the back of that scene that comes down into like a small riverbed kind of a deal, and having rock face on both sides. As far as finishing touches goes for that, I don't know. I might just throw a bunch of rock down in there, because how often from that high do you actually see animals moving around down that low? Mind you, that's 200 plus feet.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's like what I was telling you, where somebody told me you don't see the roofs when you're walking down the street.
Right.
You know, but I mean, I have no choice. I mean, the roofs are there, so I do have to do something.
Well, I mean that's all up to you personally, right? So you can look at this one in two ways. You can look at it from, you flying over the city at 200 feet above the roofs, and then yeah, you'd have to do that. Or you could take the vantage point of you're looking at it as you're walking down the street. Take your pick,
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think that
How much work and time do you want to put into it?
I think that all depends on your viewing angle that you're going for. Like Andy, we all know Andy, he's doing it right at eye level. So you're not going to necessarily see the roofs on Andy's layout, especially at his, main level. His lower level you might, his upper level you're definitely not going to see the roofs.
No.
So,
but you better believe he's still going to model it, because that's how anal Andy is about it.
Oh, that's how Andy rolls.
And
Exactly.
not everybody who visits the layout is a midget. So, I'm a short person. I can get away. It is eye level for me for sure. But there, I want it to be appealing to people of a range of heights, and that's why I've got a raised floor section in part of the layout, even is to accomplish that. So, yeah, if it's there on the prototype, and I agree that roofs are something that used to be particularly hard to do. Now, the joy of flyover photography or Google Earth or something is wonderful. Go dig into that and look at what's on the prototype roofs. There's trash up there. You'll find a tire and other crap. And if it's there on the prototype, I want to recreate it.
It's amazing sometimes what you find on roofs. Like you said, it could be a business roof somewhere, and there's a tire sitting up there for some odd reason.
Yeah.
Because some young punk decided to throw it up there as a prank for some of his friends.
Yeah. I'm not going to be making up little tiny shoes and putting them over my telephone lines.
Oh, I've got to try to do that. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, we got to try to pull that off.
All right, so let's jump over. We already covered what Tim's final touches are. Let's jump over to Andy. See what Andy thinks.
So
you got 10 minutes. That's it.
Now, for one, I also have, still under major construction on my layout. So there's a couple points that are worth mentioning, and I'll show you a couple of scenes that I have made some progress on, because as I said, I like to work, the full range of the hobby. I like to participate in from time to time. So I have done some scenes. And one problem I've had is detailing or organizing all the detail parts. I've got numerous of these containers that I slowly divide the parts into various sections. I started out with a box of detail parts, and I've slowly got this, which is just trash and detail parts, and clotheslines and things like that. I've got a separate for people. I've got separate boxes for rolling stock. or for couplers, for wheel sets for trucks, those kind of boxes. One of the keys that I think that I've enjoyed to try to bring my layout to fruition the way I want a layout is modularity. And to Robert's point about being able to change a layout between operating sessions or between visits, I built operational hinges on the outhouse doors, for example. It lets you set up scenes that will be different. It's right on the edge of the aisle. Now, whether I'll use these in 1987 or not, jury's still out. In 1950, for sure, outhouses would have been a part of the world. It'll probably just be grown up in 87 because it would have been there. But I wanted to be able to change the scene.
Andy, let me jump in here for just a second, because I want to poll the audience here. We got 28 people watching, so I want to poll the audience. How many of y'all are going to put operational hinges on your outhouses? Put a yes or no in the comments. I want to see just how many people will actually go that level.
Well, the point is, the bigger picture is about the ability to change the layout between visits or sessions, or so that you can change eras. And I'm going to show you a couple of the modular steps I've taken in order to change scenes. So I built billboards, and instead of, and this is a kit from Monroe Models, but I didn't like the commitment, so I put U channels, I think they are, to hold the signage piece. I haven't put a sign on here, quite obviously, but I need to put a billboard on there. I can change billboards. It makes this a modular piece, and the top of the billboard has the top of the U cap, so when it signs down in there, it completes the frame and the trim. So that makes that modular. And I take this to every extent. Most of my structures, the vast majority of them, are on diorama bases. The little city scene has all that I showed you guys a few weeks ago, has, the 5 or 6 buildings will all be on that, so I can pull that off in its entirety. This structure that I built as the first one on the fine scale show that we done is on a small diorama base. It's perfect for 1950. It's built off of photos from that because I'm a prototype modeler. But in 1987, it won't be there. This will just be a field with some piles of ties and stuff. Just a little triangle that'll set that in place, and I'll throw some ballast over the gaps. The joy is, though, that I can flip my layout between 87 and 57 by swapping this single diorama base with the structure or without. But the structure itself is modular to the base, and it's got a square of wood under it and a square of wood under the building, so that it holds it in registration. And then the base itself has a square of wood under it and a square of wood on the layout. And the few buildings that I have, small buildings that I have that are not on diorama bases, that need to fit more into the scenery, for example, I've got a little shack here for one of the guys for the railroad crew, and I just put a little square of 1/8 inch square stock or something on the layout and on the bottom of the building sometimes, that forces that building into registration. So that if you bump the layout, the building doesn't move. And the roof is removable so that I can work on it if I need to. And it has a full interior because I've used real glass, like microscope cover slides, but I use Sierra Model Works, semi-scale glass. It's, super thin, and our Lloyd's took to using that stuff as well. It's just spectacular, but you can see into the interior. You can see the cold, the little, what do they call those? Little fireplace anyway, or the little stove, and a bucket of coal and some bunk beds for the crew and an office desk.
Potbelly stove.
Potbelly stove. That's what I was looking for. So I've tried to make everything fairly modular to an extent. Now, a couple of things I want to mention that have helped me do that, and I may not have time to change the camera to the top view that I've got set up to show you what I was working on with this structure, but a couple of the keys that make that possible are adhesives. That's been a challenge. So, and I know people use various other ones, but a couple that I want to mention to you guys that are particularly interesting. So I don't use super glue a lot, but I use it for detail parts. It's one of the few adhesives that will put grab irons on a box car, for example. That's a super glue problem. That's the solution. Canopy glue is the bee's knees. I put glass in with it for sure, and I do a lot of other things with it. It is a PVA glue, but it's super thin. and it dries virtually complete or as close to completely clear as is possible. A little dull coat may be required, but it's pretty doggone close to perfectly clear. It doesn't fog up window material, and it stays semi-flexible, so parts are removable or rather repositionable. For figures, I'll set them with rubber cement. I know the Woodland Scenics makes a glue hobby tack that I like pretty good for the same purpose. But with a small amount of this stuff, it's also semi-transparent. So if you don't perfectly hide it, it's good enough. And I just use very small amounts of it with a needle, for example. Also, I've took to this stuff, Sugru. I found this stuff recently. Comes in these little small packages because once you open it, it's a moldable glue. It's like a cross between clay and epoxy. So it's pretty good if you're working with something slightly larger, but it's also semi-flexible and can be cut and or damaged or removed so you can reposition it. So even on this diorama, all the detail parts that are on that, all the small detail parts and all the trash and the garbage that are piled up there, all that's put on with rubber cement. And it's solid as you could ask for. It'll stay right there as I pull this diorama or reposition this diorama or take it out and swap it for the other 1987 equivalent scene. But if I want to change some of that stuff, if I get tired with it, rubber cement, it'll pop off there with a pair of tweezers. And that's what tools are a big component of that too. So I mean, you're going to need a pair of tweezers. And then I really love these little things. Goes in an X-Acto handle. That's a glue tool. That's pretty spectacular, especially if you're working with small amounts of glue. Super glue is an obvious one, but I use it with canopy glue too when I'm working with small quantities of those adhesives. So now we are also talking about final details as the end complete of a scene. And I'm sure that's definitely true for me. As I said, I have to kind of lay it out and put it together. I have some vision of it, but I have to kind of put it together as I'm going, even though I'll have an initial vision, because when I start putting it together in, kind of 1-to-1 or 1-to-87, but in people space, in real world space, I don't always love the initial idea I had. I'm an engineer, not an artist at heart. And, that's the way my psychology works. So I often have to lay it out and play with it. So repositionability and flexibility is pretty key for me. So I really like tools that let me do that, adhesives that let me do that, and philosophies that let me make changes. I make roofs removable pretty much always. At a very minimum, you need to get in and replace lights. And I totally agree with the guys who were suggesting that lighting is such an important part, because it's one of the very few places where you can bring life to a scene that wouldn't otherwise have it, especially if you can automate your lighting. So that's the essence of what I'm doing. While we're talking, I'll flip my camera over and kind of mess with the scene I've been working on. But I've been working on this structure for a period. Oh, my camera. This is the street scene that I've been working on for a while. And so I've made the roofs removable pieces. It's built with individual sticks of wood because it's what I could do to get the effect I want. And this building is sliced to the fascia so you can look inside. And I'll need to remove that, so I need to put some rubber cement on that. That way I can pop that out if I needed to. This is supposed to be a shoe store, and I've got a whole bunch of those cheap little plastic people from China at Lloyd's suggestion, actually. And I'm going to cut a whole lot of people's feet off. But because this seat is cut to the aisle, I've even, built the flooring section, which is, going to be removable so I can get to that floor with the lighting built into the lighting is built into the floor. You can see the wires for the little LEDs and stuff, but it's exposed so you can see the ends of the floor joists as they're exposed to this floor. And I've been building the interior walls. Same thing for the actual roof section. Has the same exposure of the roof joists. But so this little storage area up above, I have some boxes and some junk up there. But I'm putting together a scene in this office. This office is sliced immediately to the outside. So what little you can see of the actual shoe store up here, I just need some shelves along this wall, and I need to, kind of amputate a whole lot of cheap Chinese made plastic people and put a bunch of shoes on some shelves up here and put a few people up here. Somebody sitting at a desk or something here, and one of the people standing here asking them a question or something. The point is that it brings it to life and tells a little story. I got this little clubhouse. Clubhouse is kind of neat too. I got a little tree house that I've been super happy with, but I don't know where that's going to go. But it keeps moving about the layout until I can figure out where it makes sense. I'm happier with the tree house than anything I've probably done, but modularity is key. So I make it removable, but I do the same thing that I do for the roofs here, as I do for my structures. I have square stock wood on these walls. It's a very thin piece of wood, just enough to add the resistance that this roof wall or the floor section will not pass. So it will set squarely into position and it won't move around or bounce around. I don't have to adhere that. If I did, I could put a little rubber cement on it, but it fills all the gaps and all the seams, and that piece can be slid in and out if and when I need to, not if, when I inevitably need to replace some LEDs. So that's kind of my philosophy on the whole thing.
Any questions, Robert?
Not yet. Not so far. Bill says, Andy, you do pay attention to detail. Good job.
Yeah, I might be slightly obsessive about it, but if you want your layout to have some life to it, details where it's going to be. Got to tell little stories, and the stories are all in the details. I mean, if you've told a story to your buddy sitting at the bar, the thing that brings your story to life, even if it's just verbal, if you've listened to a book or read a book, the details bring that to life, even if it's just in written or spoken word, and you're visualizing all this stuff. Humans care about detail. It's going to matter on your layout, spectacularly so. But I also think you need to have an idea or a vision early on so that you can plan the big picture elements for that. I mean, before I laid track, before I cut the styrofoam for this, I had an idea of how that sitting scene was going to work out. I could envision looking through that structure before I ever pulled a piece of styrofoam down flat and started cutting it for track work. I had an idea for it. Good deal.
We actually have found somebody that's a little more anal retentive than Andy is.
Oh, there's
good
a lot
job,
of
Human
us.
City Junction.
There's a lot of us. It's not that rare for people. I mean, Lloyd, was.
Oh.
That's all right. So, all right, let's just go ahead and jump over to Lloyd here to wrap us up for this episode of the season. Thank God.
Well, for me, details are what's the most important thing. I've had people come to see my layout like 3-4 times, and every time, like I said, they find something different. They ask me, "Oh, when did you put that in?" I said, "It was there when you came the first time." "Oh, I never saw that." But I am definitely a fanatic of details. Like, for example, what you're seeing right now, the diorama. I'll try to bring the camera closer. But in the ditch, you'll find tires. Also, I was going to say, the diorama was named Roger Moore and what's his name? Martin Sheen for moonshine. And you got a guy sitting drinking moonshine. You've got the moonshine. I call it the moonshine dog because it's a hound dog. Like the details, the cars were all weathered. The inside is also done, but only with a picture. You got a moonshine in the back. You got a bunch of stuff on the dock. Like the tires, I just had some extra tires. I just cut them in half We've all seen that. Mailbox, the fences are all scratch built. So you don't have to spend that much money to have details. Another point that we didn't bring up is I'm just going to switch over. A lot of you know that I'm building a huge brewery, and when we go to details, all those doors that you see are going to be activated by a toggle switch. So the doors are going to go up, but there's also a light by the door. The light is red. So when the door starts going up, once it reaches the top, the light turns green, telling the operator that he can drop the cars in. There's also going to be a sound, a warning sound for the doors. So those kind of details for me is important because it's going to make people talk and probably screw up the operations because there's going to be too much to see. So yeah, like I was telling you, I've got like an apple orchard. I will have it because I don't have it now. I just have to make those trees. I've got all the apples though. Like my city scene, like I was saying, I got the bus stop, the newspaper stand, I got a telephone booth. And since it's the fall season, so you got a bunch of leaves on the streets. I even have the culvert. When you have that yellow line painted in the middle of the street, it goes over the culvert. Well, I place the culvert sideways, like it was removed after it was painted. So that's a little detail. It's not big, but it's all things like that.
It could be patch jobs. Come back in and make your road look like they've come in, dug it up, and repatched it. And all you have to do on that is just take a marker, or a paintbrush and paint it that way. To me, finishing touch, like we said, finishing touches, it's to me it's make it look like it's ready for people to move in and live there, or people are living there.
Well, it was brought up that also that it's never finished, right?
Exactly.
So my city scene, I don't have any patches on my road, and that's one thing I'll do at a later stage. But it is a detail that I will do later on. So it's not totally finished. It's finished for now. So electronics are also, like I was saying, is part of your finishing touches. Like you've got a cross gate, lampposts with street lights, or I've got inside my my workshop. I got flickering lights to show there's welding being done. And that was done with Arduino, like a blue light, a white light flashing, and suddenly a red light goes on saying that the welding is done. Now the piece is just red hot and dims down to like it's cool, and it starts over again. I've got a box car, which is on not a lift, but on chains that's lifted up. And inside the box car, there's also welding lights. So and there's a guy underneath. It looks like the guy is welding under the box car. It does tell a story, and like I said, it makes people talk. So those are the finish. For me, that's what finishing touches are. It's just those little things that will make people talk.
And it could boil down to hey, I'm happy with putting trees on it, and that's finishing for me. It all depends on you as the modeler, what you consider that section of layout finished as.
Mm-hmm.
And generally it's for now.
Yeah. Like I say, some sections are finished, but not really because I haven't done any trees yet.
Yeah.
But for me, like now,
never finished is that There's always those extra steps that you take. You may have little parts of scenes. That's beautiful about how, Lloyd does the diorama sections, much like I do, is that you can do some super detail in some areas. Not everybody goes as far. Like these little, that's 100, or there's a couple broke off because I've already used a couple of them. Those are pop bottles or beer bottles or whatever you want to be, but that's a bottle. It's smaller than a stamp with 100 of those on them. But if you have a table and you've got two fellas sitting outside of a little convenience store or something, having a couple of pop bottles sitting on the table is those finishing details that makes it feel like it's right.
Yeah, one of these days I may even go in and decide to build a nursing home and have a shuffleboard set up outside where it looks like ill people are playing shuffleboard, or I don't know.
Sure.
It's just you get to a certain point on a scene and you get to looking at it and you're like, I was happy with it, but now I can do so much more with it.
But you may do all the detail on a particular thing. You may build out a bridge and put all the NBWs or nut bolt washer castings on that bridge, and you put the bridge in, and you're done with it. You've spent a few months. Your brain is cooked about that particular thing. But when you come back and look, that there should be a couple brown bottles laying on the ground underneath the bridge. Those little things are those things that you may not notice on first visit, or you might. You're not going to see all those little things. But when you're standing there waiting for the signal to give you the clearance, and you're looking at all those little details, and you see the couple beer bottles down there, Jake and Henry had a good time sitting there a few nights ago, and there's a story, there's a life to it.
It's like my diorama. I've got those jugs. I've got 3 jugs. I got one that was broken, so it's just sitting on a post. I got another one that's lying on the ground, and the other one, the guy has it in his hands. Yes. And it's moonshine jugs.
I like that. I'd like to have some of those. I mean, this is Kentucky, this is actually southwestern West Virginia, or southwestern Virginia for me. So those things are appropriate, whether it's 57. And there are a lot of changes between 1957 and 1987, and the diorama basis and the modularity let me change those things. But a lot of those things stay the same.
Heck, all the way to 2027, those things are going to probably stay the same in that region. I mean,
1920 or 2020, there's still going to be some moonshine around. And me and Ralph have disputed that. And anybody who knows us from Thursday shows or from the regular nightlies knows that that's not uncommon for us to dispute that. And he's right in principle. He's right 99% of it, that a lot of things don't change. That these structures that were there in 57 will be there in 87 for sure. But there are also there are changes. There are things that have happened and adjusted for. And if you're modeling fictitious, you can, or more toward fictitious, you can fake a lot more of that. But if you're trying to capture a prototype place and feel, it's more to me about feel than it is the actual details. But there's subtle details that really nest you. And I think those details said it. I mean, signs and billboards and road signs. Those are the things that really tell you where you are, a lot about where you are.
And for some of us, like me and you that have been in the military, or people who travel for long periods of time, there are some drastic changes that happen within like your hometown. Like if you're gone from your hometown, if you move out or move away for a year or two, you come back, landmarks aren't going to be there. Your old landmarks aren't necessarily always going to be there. So
I see that. Well,
I gotta get ready to go grab supper from DoorDash.
But if we don't have any more questions, I think we put it in an hour. I want to bring to your all's attention that this coming Wednesday, we will have kind of a behind the scenes or a behind the music kind of style of tour and a conversation with Big Bill on his show. Who's Big Bill talking to? It's going to be us group of jokers he's going to talk to. We're going to kind of wrap up what things we learned about this season, because this was our first go at this style of complete 30,000 foot view of layout construction. And we're going to talk a lot about things that we learned and are going to try in season 2. And we're, open to questions about that or input from that and opinions. We want to know what worked and what didn't because we're figuring that out as well. Although we have a lot of ideas for the season 2 that's going to start, in a number of months over this winter. So look for us this coming Wednesday. If you have anything that you'd like to message us about privately, most of us are on Facebook and we're findable. And I'm happy to add you as friend on my Facebook account. Or you can email any one of us individually, just at our first name at modelrealitylive.com, Andy at modelrealitylive.com, Robert, Tim, Lloyd, we're all available. Or you can email our group at empires@modelrealitylive.com. This will be our last show for this particular season, this 10 episode block. Look for us this coming Wednesday on Big Bill's show. And who's Big Bill talking to? And we'll see you guys back in a few months on this show. Thank you guys so much for joining us.